Hello and welcome to episode number 8 of the Peer Project podcast. And if you're watching this on YouTube or wherever you get your video podcast, then welcome to the den. This is the first time that I'm recording out the den. I normally do this on my kitchen table, but I've decided to repurpose the den so we can get more podcasting going on and more video podcasts and things like that. But if you are listening on iTunes or anywhere else that you get your podcast, you are welcome to go and have a wee look at the den all over our social media. Before I get started today and talking about this week's guest, I want to say a special thank you to a few people. First of all, the first person that I want to say thank you is a gentleman by the name of Ellis. Now, Ellis, I don't know Ellis from diddly squat. I know nothing about this guy. But I tweeted out a wee while ago that things were a bit tight because of the cost of living crisis, and Ellis found my Ko-fi page and donated some money towards the podcast. So thank you, Ellis. And that means that today's episode is yours. So Ellis is our executive producer of today's podcast. Now, all of the links are all over the social media. Just look for Jukebox Events or Duke Writes Books, and you can find it all there, including the coffee link where you can buy a coffee and support the podcast there. Now, on to this week's guest. I've been looking forward to this one for weeks, and to be honest with you, I had scheduled an interview with her about 2 weeks ago, but things got in the way, children and things like that. But so this week it's going to be a good one. If you've ever listened to the podcast Sweet Bobby, then you might know who this person is. It's a lady by the name of Kirat, and Kirat is quite frankly a victim of catfishing, and one of the most elaborate catfishing scams that there's ever been. It's unbelievable, honestly, and I'm not going to tell you to go away and listen to the Sweet Bobby podcast just now. You can listen to it after this podcast. Just this whole story about Kirat and Bobby and the twists and turns behind it, and just 10 years of her life just disappeared. And we're talking about how that affects her mental health and how she's overcome these I want to say demons, that's maybe not even the right word, just how overcome these hurdles in her life that she didn't even ask for. So, I want you to sit back, I want you to relax, and I really want you to listen and just take in what Kirat has got to say on episode 8 of the Peer Project podcast. I only discovered the podcast purely by accident because I just got really got obsessed with true crime podcasts, and then I googled, some of the most popular true crime podcasts, and this Sweet Bobby came up, and I was like, I'll give this a wee go. And within minutes, I was hooked on the thing, because the story itself is, it's something almost that could be written, could be made up by someone. It's so far-fetched that... But
you couldn't make it up either. Like, I remember I used to sit in the office with my colleagues, and when stuff would happen, I'd say, like, it's so crazy, you couldn't even write it. That was my word. Often that's what I would say.
It was so dramatic with the kind of twists and turns, especially how it turned out at the end, that it did almost seem made up. And I mean that in the nicest way. I'm not saying that it is made up, because we know that it's not. But it just...
Well, it is.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. I mean the story itself, but for people who haven't heard the Sweet Bobby podcast, they're only listening to my podcast for the first time. Now, I don't want to go into the whole thing because it's like an 8-episode podcast and we don't have that much time. But why don't you try and give us the short version of what happened? If there is a short version.
Oh, it's really hard to cut a very long story short. I was approached online by somebody who was a family, extended family, who's dating another one of my cousins. And yeah, he passed away. Then his brother got in touch with me to say thank you and just started talking to me. I was in a relationship. He was in a relationship. It was nothing like that. We just talked occasionally. And that went on for a few years. And then eventually, he became really ill. He died, he came alive again, which is all of a weird thing anyway, but I wasn't that close to him. We ended up in a relationship while he was paralyzed, and that was in a hospital in New York. And that was kind of by accident. I thought he was going to die and he had a few months left to live. He never died. And it just went from bad to worse. And it involved lots of people, like him talking to a lot of people around me, my friends and family, me talking to his friends and family constantly. And then it slowly, as things became weirder and we wouldn't see each other, he wouldn't see me, it became kind of controlling and abusive and quite nasty, and not just from like one person, but it would be sometimes different people. Mm-hmm. But it ended up, for me, it was like all those questions. Is he real? Of course, I'd met him. I'd bumped into him. I know his family. I've got pictures in his family and with his family, and there was all of that. But then my cousin, who'd been dating his brother in the first instance, she knew the family really well, and she'd been out and she'd told me about presents from him and seen him. But it turned out it was all her.
So, and just to kind of give a bit of clarification here, this is 10 years of your life that we're talking about. It's not just, a few months or something. This is 10 years. This is a long, long time.
Yeah, it all started back in 2009. And it was like a gradual getting to know me, I guess, for the first few years. I don't know what was going on, to be honest. And then from the relationship point, there was that kind of happy period, like, what you call your honeymoon period. But again, he was paralyzed in hospital. And then a few months later, it just, once his family began to get involved and things, it started becoming quite horrible. So he was supportive, but the situation became nasty. And then eventually he became horrible. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was just not great.
And when you refer to these other family members as well, this is all your cousin, isn't it? It's not, this community was created by your cousin, is that right?
So yeah, every single person that I'd been speaking to had been her. Mm-hmm. And we found, I found about 60 profiles, and some of them had multiple ways of communication. So they might be on lots of different social media channels. They might have emails, phone numbers. I'd be communicating with people in different ways. And again, there were people that I thought I knew, like I know who they were. My family knows who they are. Like lots of us, it wasn't just me talking. It was lots of people talking to him. Around me. So there was that kind of whole thing. You felt comfortable. It wasn't like a one-on-one conversation in isolation from everybody else. And I was talking to his family and friends. But everything had been a big setup. I think I only approached one person myself when something went wrong. And even that person was a fake. But I'd met him with him in Brighton. So I knew it was his friend. I'd seen him in lots of pictures with him. And when I'd seen him in Brighton, he was the one that was with him. When I reached out to him, you'd assume it's the real person. He's not approached me. I've approached him.
That's the situation in the nightclub. Is that right? Is that the 2 a.m. meet that was spoken about in the podcast as well?
So very early on, after speaking to Bobby, a few months later, it was my friend's hen weekend and we were down in Brighton. At this point, I didn't even know where he lived. So it was a massive shock to me as he walked past in the club. And I recognized him and his friend. And I went over and chatted to them, but it was like quite late by then. Bit noisy. And he did respond, but he just seemed a little bit oblivious. And given that we hadn't met face to face before, like knowingly ever. It was, I was just like, kind of, let's just leave it. I don't want to embarrass him. He's always been very respectful, very polite. I don't want to put him in an awkward position. And I never even told him that I met him. I just let it go because he wasn't like a best friend or anything like that. It was just, yeah.
So, I mean, the thing is, right, we could sit here and we could talk about this whole story and we could be here until midnight talking about it and we wouldn't even scratch the surface. So what I'm going to say right away is anybody who is interested in this, in the backstory of this, go and listen to the podcast, okay? Because the Sweet Bobby podcast is first of all, it's phenomenally produced. It's an excellent story. And using the best term, the best term of the word here, excellent, because obviously it's a true story of something very traumatic that happened to you. But the way it's produced and the way it's put forward is very creative and it's really interesting and it's it's great. And I would really encourage anybody to go and listen to it. Not right now because you're listening to my podcast, but maybe once you finish this one, go back and listen to it. So. We are, now 2-3 years removed from the big reveal, I would say it was, so 2019?
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
4 years
just gone 4 years.
Where it was revealed that, Bobby and this entire community behind Bobby was one person. It was your cousin. I know that she's named in the podcast. Are we all right to talk about her?
Yeah, you're allowed to name her. Yeah. I just don't feel comfortable saying her name, but
Simran.
Yeah, Simran.
Yeah. So it turns out that was your cousin, this entire community. 4 years removed, how are you from this? How are you?
Thank you for asking. I take one day at a time. Honestly, I take one day at a time, and I'm just determined to get on with the rest of my life. But there's lots and lots of barriers. Nothing, I can't go back to where I was. I'm probably not where I expected to be, or I can't go to sort of skip forward and say, well, this is where I should have been now, so I'm there now. There's lots of question marks about my life, where it's going, how it's going. But, you just got to get on with it. And for me, it's that thing. And I'm worried. I worry sometimes, a lot of the time. But you do just have to get on with it. Because if I sit there and dwell in the past, I'm never going to move forward. And that's the biggest thing for me. I can sit there. I can want sympathy. I can sit there and want all the hugs in the world. Yes, we all want those when we're feeling down. But it's not, for those 3 first, until the civil case happened, and I didn't know the podcast was going to happen. The way that happened was kind of crazy in itself. But I had to stay quiet because nobody believed me. Everyone thought I was mad when I would start saying this. So I just gave up. So I learned to sort of keep quiet and just get on with it then. And in the background, I knew that all this work was going on because I'm the kind of person that, I gave you chances. I'm not a nasty person. I'm not spiteful. I'm not revengeful. I haven't got the energy. I'm not the kind of person that wastes energy on those things. But this is something that's really big, really important. And I think it affects more people than people dare to say. And I think my faith plays a big part in my life. And I think I wouldn't have been put through something as crazy and huge as this without a reason. So if I can turn it into a positive and help others or anything like that, I think that for me is a good thing. And it's nothing will ever say, I won't say it was worth going through that for that. But it's, if it can help others in some way, if it gives other people confidence to speak up, if it means that we can right some wrongs in society in the way that we approach things and talk to people and do things, then that's, it's a small win.
You mentioned You said something quite interesting there about the fact that, you know, this does happen to other people, and probably more people than what we might realise. Do you think that there's maybe a sense of embarrassment in, and forgive me again, I'm using the wrong terms here, okay? But obviously, in your case, it was so intricate, it was so cleverly done, right? It was very, very smart. But there must be a sense of embarrassment thinking that you were duped in a sense. And do you think that's maybe why people don't speak out about this sort of thing?
For me, I didn't feel the embarrassment. I just thought it was such a huge deception, and I'd done nothing wrong. And I think the other thing for me was I wasn't on a dating site. I was in a relationship. I wasn't looking for love online. I'm very private online. I've been a radio presenter since 2004. So had I wanted to have like a separate profile and 1 million followers, I'd be accepting all the friend requests in the world. But I'm not like that. I'm very the opposite of that. And, you know, there's 1,000,001 examples and sort of my DMs and inboxes of like, you know, they have those little dodgy messages that come in, and I've just said, sorry, do I know you? You know, literally I'm as blunt as that. Sorry, have we met? Do I know you? Politely. And usually, you know, depending on who it is, you might get a lot of abuse back. but you know, it's just, so I've always been that person. So I didn't feel I had anything to be ashamed about. I've not sent any nudes. I've not done any dodgy videos. So I've not done anything. And, you know, had I wanted to do them, I'm sure I'm okay to do that if I wanted to. But, you know, that's the kind of stuff people will judge. And it's one of the first questions that I got asked. Did you send any dodgy photos? Did you send any dodgy videos? And I'm like, no, I didn't. So it's, you know, it's where people's mind is when they're talking to you is not, are you okay? It's in the gutter. It's people's mindsets that they need to change. And so I didn't feel embarrassed, but I can imagine a lot of people do. There's a lot of horrible things said about sort of romance fraud, that it's women. A lot of people that have approached me are actually men that I know that it's happened to. Wow. And I think men find it harder than most to speak about it. So women are ashamed all the time, and maybe women find it easier to talk about this stuff, but I can't imagine many men find it easy to talk about this. Can you imagine the ribbing they'd get from their mates?
Sure.
You know, it's not an easy subject to talk about, and I think that's wrong. And I did take, you know, we shouldn't stop victim shame. We need to stop victim shaming. We need to allow people to speak out, and we need to listen. On
the subject of victim shaming, was there any sense, and this is more so from you in your head, was there any victim blaming in that sense at any point, even when it was revealed that it was your cousin? Did you think this is my fault, I brought this on myself? And again, this is not my opinion on this, and I will continue to tread carefully on this.
That's fine. Did
you ever ask yourself, how could I be so naive to believe this? Naive is maybe not the right word to use, but I hope you understand what I'm asking. I
understand where you're coming from. No, I didn't think that, because I you know, lots of people say, gullible, naive, those words. But I think many people in my position, if you understand the way my community works as well, on top of everything, but if you meet somebody, you know somebody exists and that's their family, and you're talking to them, and your family members are talking to them, your cousins, your other friends are talking to them, you know, you've got other ins into his family, you know who they are. You know, like it's, and even like on the socials at the beginning, you know, my own cousins were on the fake profiles. So I don't know, back in 2009, I don't remember if you remember what Facebook was like. It was very different. And working in the sort of the music and media circles, lots of people had 2 profiles because you didn't have like public pages and things like that, or fan pages and things. So lots of people would have a double two pages, a public one and a private one. And, you know, there was a lot of that going on at the time, and lots of people had two pages. And so things like that weren't so unusual. But, you know, again, if it's a profile page of somebody you know, and you just kind of like, oh, I must have unfriended that person by mistake and they've sent you a new request and it looks legit, you add it. So I had so many real people on those fake pages who didn't know they were following the fake page.
It's just so, I mean, I can picture, you know, Simran with, you know, like pictures on the wall, pieces of string all clapped together, trying to work it. So this is the person, I spoke to this person, I said this was it, because it is so intricate. And that's the thing about lies as well, is that, you know, it's one tiny slip up and you can be caught out. But this went on for 10 years.
I think there were slip-ups. But I think there were slip-ups, and I think there's two things there. One, I was kept so busy. And so, I mean, I'm quite a rational, logical person. I'm very systematic in the way I see and do things. I pay a lot of attention to detail, so I pick up on things quite a lot. But there'd been a long process of learning about me and my responses, I think, before the relationship phase. But I was kept so busy that you can't respond to everything that's happening around you. And so sometimes if there was a slip up, I might have missed it. Right, but then there were other things where there were slip ups where I'd pick up on them. Either they were justified, or that's where the coercive control and the gaslighting started. Sure. A lot of gaslighting started where I'm, you know, for people who know me, I've got a very sharp memory when it comes to certain things, which isn't always nice for people because I always remind them of that things. But I think that's when I felt like I was beginning to go mad, because I knew that wasn't, I was like, no, that definitely wasn't the way. But then you had not one person, you might have 2, 3, 4 people telling you you're wrong. They were all one person. But when you've got, and then you start questioning yourself and your sanity.
Honestly, and I'll say this as well, just to the listeners, because obviously I'd mentioned, it's like, was it 8 episodes, 12 episodes, the podcast? If you do want like a quick version of it, there is a cracking documentary that I watched last night, the Vice documentary. It's about 17 minutes long, and that gives you a really good insight to what happened to Kirat and the backstory behind it. So 4 years on, and everybody, any mental illness, any issue that comes along with mental health stems from some sort of early trauma. And obviously this is a really traumatic time for you, especially when the reveal happened, it turned out that it was your cousin. How are you at forming relationships now? You know, new relationships, you know, like, for example, you and I have just met. This is the first time that we've spoken face to face, if you want to, if we can say that. But how do you feel about speaking to me? Do you trust me? You know, after all that.
Thing is, this is the thing, and I think my mindset is very different to a lot of people. I don't wrap myself in cotton wool. I haven't wrapped myself in cotton wool. Otherwise I wouldn't do anything. I was very quick to sort of get up. I think at the very beginning when I was really upset, I'd missed 10 years of my life, lost 10 years of my life. And I was just that adrenaline, I was so eager to just get on with it. And I didn't have an Instagram page at the time. I changed my Twitter handle. I was so eager to reclaim everything. But that was the adrenaline rush, as well. Very quickly onto a dating app, and I dated somebody. But it wasn't that I wasn't the one person I dated. It was somebody that had been actually tried to be introduced to me in real life anyway. And he approached me, and I was literally off the dating app. But dating app world was the first time I've done anything like that, and it's scary, and I would never do that ever again. Okay. It's, for me, it was terrifying. But otherwise, in real life, IRL, as they say. It's like, I am determined to just get on with it. If everyone is not my perpetrator, and it's like, you have a bad relationship with anybody. I try not to blow it out of proportion. I try to think, if you had a bad relationship, you had a bad, partner, and you bad break up with somebody, it takes you a while to get over it, but you've got, you try and move on and find somebody new. And it's like, okay, not every single person in the world is like this perpetrator. I have to, in my mind, know that. Everybody is not that person. Everybody's not going to be able to do that to that degree to me. And I am careful. I've got to trust myself. I am quite careful person. This is somebody who knows that I'm careful and work the way around that. So I'm okay. Where I wobble is relationships, and as in not like romantic relations, but any relationships I've had from before, that I lost lots of friends. I lost touch with lots of people, and it's reconnecting with those people. That's where the nerves come in. That's where I have. Yeah.
The people that you're reconnecting with now, have they come back into your life since the podcast, and since it's been more public about what you've been through?
I think some came back, slowly. Some, since 2018, I've built new relationships with new friends and networks as well. I have reached out to old friends, some of them, and had their support. But since the podcast came out, it's opened my eyes to who has reached out and who hasn't, and who's responded how. And not that I'm sort of writing lists of names down on, to, not my friend, hate this person. It's nothing like that. But at the end of the day, you just note who you can trust and who you can rely on. And people that have come out of the woodwork who've known me for years and who I've lost touch with, like old friends from uni who haven't spoken to for years and years and years, who have reached out with messages of support. And it's been really surprising who has and who hasn't. And it's a learning process. And you just learn who people really are, I think. So whether that's a positive or a negative, I don't know, because it's sad sometimes.
Yeah. Obviously, this is a family matter as well. How have the family been in terms of supporting you and going forward? Because I know it's mentioned in the podcast, and one of the kind of latter episodes, about how I believe, and this is going back now, I'm trying to remember, that you were almost asked not to do anything, or not to say anything about it, because this is family, let's keep it within the family. But obviously it's now out there, it's now one of the most popular podcasts in the world. How have the family been since it's been public?
Well, it's difficult for the family. I'm not even going to put it you hear my parents in episode 6, you hear me and my dad have a sort of moment. But, my parents love me. I love my parents. But it's difficult, the community that we live in, and the way our community and the norms and the social norms are in our community might be different from the mainstream. And people don't always understand that. And I can understand that, that's that pull. People say, it's your child, it's your this, but it's also your family. And we are a community. We're supposed to be close. Things change. Society changes. We're here in the UK, and things are slightly different, but it's difficult. It's horrible for everybody. I know I have the support of some family members, but there's never been a great big sit down group anything ever. Everybody talks to me one by one, or they don't talk to me at all about it. Some people choose to totally ignore it. It's quite strange in that way. So I just get on with it. I just go and do what I need to do. If people want to talk to me about it, great. I don't put it out there in people's faces, but I want to be myself. I remember going out at Diwali to the local Gurdwara, and that's a Sikh place of worship. And that was the first time since the podcast went out. And I felt, you had eyes on me.
Yeah.
And there were people that were like talking to my mum happily, people who would normally hug me and be nice and just being strange. And then I was like, I felt it. And then until I saw a couple there that I knew, and they were like talking about the podcast, and I was like, that was me. And they were like, what? Because they've known me growing up. And they were family as well, actually. And they were just absolutely shocked. And then they're like, oh no, that person's husband knows, and that they know. So it's just people just don't know how to sometimes say anything. And I think that first time I went there, it was like deep breath kind of. Oh, you okay? Deep breath kind of moment, like everyone's looking. Everyone's staring, that horrible feeling that you have. They're not sure if it's me or is it me or all of that. And no one knew what to say. So when people behave like that, we just open up the conversation. It's been tough. I don't make anybody talk about it. I am surprised by some people's non-reactions. I'm surprised by how much love from some people that I've had. I mean, only one member of my extended family has come gushingly angry. Like that was the response that you want from people, your family. I think it was only one member of the sort of extended family who had been sent it by a colleague and she listened to it, and then she texted me, and it was an aunt, and she texted me, and then she said, "Can I phone you?" I'm like, "Of course you can. You don't have to ask my permission to phone me." And but she was so angry, and she was like, "What the hell's going on?" And she should be like that. And I was like, as much as I don't agree with some of that kind of whatever, but just know that there's that love and that concern for me, and that feeling that was very emotional for me, because I'd expected maybe more people to react like that. Or you'd want more people to kind of react like that. But I think lots of people are just scared.
It's so fascinating, because obviously we're two different families here, and I'm trying to think about it if it was my family, and thinking, because I'm really, really close to my cousins, and everybody's very close knit, and I'm thinking, obviously you've been through this, and your cousin is surely, and forgive me, I may be wrong here, but surely she's out of your life now. This is somebody you mentioned earlier. You can barely even say her name. For
me, so she was never a close cousin to start with.
Right.
So, she's much younger than me. She's from the extended family, but I'm very much a family person. I think out of probably most of my cousins, I'm the one that turns up at events when none of my cousins turn up, because they're like, it's not for us really, we don't want to go, but I still go. I make a point of knowing my family. It's my heritage. It's my family. It's, that's where I learn everything about my ancestors from and everything, and make sure we keep that going forward. I'm the one that's done my family tree. It's all of that. I'm that person in the family. So I make a point of knowing people, and I knew her. But the thing is that I think, as I explained, I did some work at her school. I did an annual project. There was a government initiative with like schools clusters or something, and I was involved with that. So there was an annual project with seed funding, and it was just based at a school. The person I was working with is based at the school, and every year the event would grow, and she was involved. So I got to know her there. There's lots of connections with her and her family, and obviously she knows who I am, and that kind of thing. So when I was approached by the brother, I was a bit shocked, because she just wasn't the kind of person that I thought would be doing that kind of stuff or into that kind of stuff at her age, because that's not how she came across in the family at all at that time. And then, but I didn't just go off and speak to him like that. When I'd gone to the school and there'd been a meeting where she was, and I just at the end of the meeting, I just kind of said, I've had this approach, do you want me to speak to him or do you not want me to? She was like, no, please do, kind of thing. And that was literally all it was. Because she knows that my thing would be to protect her. So that's it.
That's frustrating to know that as well, because your aim is to protect her, yet she was doing all that. I can't. This is me, and I don't even know you, and I'm sitting here getting angry about it. I want to talk about the real Bobby for a second. Obviously, I know the how this all came to a head at the end was you ended up traveling to Brighton to confront Bobby, showed up at his house, and it turned out that he had no idea who you were.
Yeah.
And at that point, your entire world at that point, 10 years of relationship, of love, of life had just completely disappeared. How did he react when all this came out? Like, because this guy's just went about his life for 10 years not knowing that he's in a relationship with you.
No, he wasn't in a relationship with me.
No, exactly. But how did he take it? How was he when all this came out?
I don't know. I've never had a conversation with him directly.
Wow, really?
No.
Okay, that's.
I've never had a conversation with him directly.
Would you, if it came up, if the opportunity came up, would you?
I think I would. I've got no issues with it. I'm not sure at the beginning that they understood how big this was. But I don't know if they do now either. I'm not sure. But, it was nice that they took part in the podcast when Alexi asked them. And, but I've not had any communication post that event at Brighton. But even that day, I literally thought I'd caught my partner red-handed, living a double life.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I had thought, because the behavior was weird. We obviously both knew what we were talking about. It was, you hear it in that episode where, like, I think whether he's telling his part and I'm telling exactly the same. No one's got any issue. It's just like, he obviously knew my cousin and I'd passed the phone to him. Obviously I trusted my cousin and, it was just such a surreal thing. And it must have been surreal for him because I seem to know everything about him. And for me, I was like, well, he knows her and he knows this and he is the right person. And my gut feeling had said to me he was in Brighton. And when I found him there, I wasn't surprised. But I was surprised when the rest of the family walked out. It was a massive kick in the gut. It was, that my whole world came tumbling down at that moment, no matter what was going to come ahead of me. I didn't know what was coming ahead of me, but that was enough.
Yeah. And the one question that popped up, actually, my wife and I were talking about this last night, and it was her idea to ask you this question, so you can blame her for this one. Did you grieve the loss, and I'll use the term loss, but did you grieve the loss of the fake Bobby? Because in your head, that is somebody that has been in your life for such a long time, and then all of a sudden they're not there anymore. They don't exist anymore. Did you have the chance to grieve fake Bobby, if you want to call fake Bobby?
This is like the toughest part of it all, I think. I might get a little bit emotional, but I'm still going to talk through it. But one, I'd seen that happen, so I thought he was living a double life. And then you find out what you find out, that it's all somebody else. And what I think, you know, and I've probably said this before elsewhere, that, you know, I didn't just lose Bobby, I lost my cousin, I lost all the people that were in that scenario. They suddenly just didn't exist.
Uh-huh.
They're gone without any explanation. What was I supposed to say to anybody? I had no comfort from anybody. Anybody else that had been talking to them were also in shock. I couldn't sleep in my room. You know, nightmares, and I still occasionally have them. I mean, I do still struggle with these triggers and things, but, you know, you learn to deal with them as time goes on. But that was... Imagine losing your whole family overnight, you know, your hopes, your dreams, your future, just gone just like that. You know, it was really, really tough. And then not being able to talk to anybody, nobody grieving, no funeral, no nothing, no comfort, no people not even believing you. It's just like that part of my life suddenly didn't exist. It just disappeared. I think that's the thing that people don't get when this kind of stuff, when it happens to this degree. And that was really tough. And the other thing that I found really tough was that fake Bobby Real Bobby. It was like separating the two. It took me a while, which is why I wouldn't speak to anybody like him, or I didn't try to, because I needed to separate myself from everything and sensibly just detach myself and come to terms with that isn't that person, and that person who I think that person's personality is probably isn't that person. So, you know, you want to talk to that person, you're only going to be thinking of that person as the person you've been talking to. So no, I just didn't at all. I didn't try. And I wouldn't. And I'd said, if anybody wants to speak to me, there has to be somebody else present. But the conversations never happened. Nothing ever happened. No family got involved. I tried, but nobody wanted to. But yeah, so I had to be sensible, and I am quite a sensible person in that way. I just had to step back, because I was not going to have a conversation without any elders or anybody in authority involved. And I needed to make sure that I detached my version of that person from the real person. Yeah. So
one thing that that I've discovered whilst doing this podcast is that a lot of people, including myself, I'll say this and including myself, swear by therapy or counselling or whatever. You know, you've mentioned a lot throughout this chat about your community, and so did you have the opportunity to get therapy back after this? Is that something that your community would accept? Basically, have you spoken to anybody professionally about this?
Yeah, I have. I don't care what my community think of that. I need to do that for myself, right? So that's the kind of person, I need to do that for myself. I'm going to go and do that. So I did immediately. You know, going to the doctor was one of the first things. My doctor was there for me. You know, because immediately it was such a big thing. It was such a strange thing and everything that was going on. So my doctor was checking on me on a weekly basis, and I could call anytime I wanted until I got the count, because waiting lists. It's amazing how long these waiting lists are. I was, fast tracked, but it still took 2 months to get there. And I had counselling. And that initial counselling, a lot of the time I'd just sit there and just cry, because I was still normal life. I was trying to carry on as normal as possible. I was just begun a contract in the August of that year. Soon after that, I started dating somebody. So I was trying to carry on my life as normal. And a lot of the time I'd just sit in that counselling session and just sit there. It might be a silence for a whole hour sometimes, and just tears falling and saying nothing, and just like break down for an hour, and now I'm going to work. It was like that. And then there was a break, and then I was like, I need more counselling. So I did maxed as much as I could have out, and then I needed more counselling, and then I was on another waiting list, had to be reassessed. And then it was like, I've got signs of PTSD.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, of course you have.
Yeah. And so it was like, okay. So I had a psychotherapist the second time. And my biggest concern was, the worst thing was, I think the first time I went counselling was explaining what had happened to me. Mm-hmm. That takes up 6 of your sessions in my scenario anyway.
You should have just given them the link to the Vice doc.
Oh, that didn't exist then. None of those existed then. And so, I didn't want to do that. And I was terrified. I was like, I just need somebody continuous. I can't tell it all over again. But by that time, I think the civil case, I've been talking, and I'd sat down and had to write a witness statement. The police stuff was all over the place. I just didn't know what was happening. And, I just felt let down by everybody, and I was feeling really miserable. A few other things had happened. Like, people had taken advantage of my circumstances. The fact that I hadn't told my dad yet because he was still in Kenya. I was terrified because I didn't want him to be upset out there by himself. There's loads of things worried about my family. The guilt that I did feel was for my family getting in, being involved, or people that I love, my friends, some of them being, dragged into this. And that's the guilt I felt and probably still feel that I have to work on. But yeah, I had psychotherapy, and my psychotherapist that I had was brilliant. Hats off to her. She said, give me your witness statement and I'll just read it. She was amazing. And that just put her in a good place from the start to work with me throughout the rest of my sessions. But unfortunately, the way that the health service works is you only have so many sessions you can with somebody, and then you can't go back to that person. If you want to use them privately, you have to have a massive gap. And if you want to go back to counselling, there's another massive waiting list. And I have to say, the times I've tried in the past now, like in the last 2 years, to have more counselling by the NHS, it's been a massive break. Or they say, no, we think you're okay, you're managing. Just because I'm able to, I'm articulate, I'm still as much as I am back to my jolly kind of old, bubbly kind of crazy self. And people see that and they don't see the private side of me. And they just want to put you on antidepressants. And I think I did everything without medications up to that point. I wasn't going to do that. I just needed to talk to somebody. So I felt really let down. Even before the psychotherapy stuff, even before that, I'd been told, no, you're okay.
How bad did it get privately? Because obviously you'd said that you'd outwardly you're bubbly, well-spoken, but people don't know what was going on behind closed doors. So if anything that you can tell me, how bad did it get behind closed doors?
It gets it can get bad. You have people experience panic attacks in different ways. I have panic attacks. I've had them before. I had them before this. I didn't know that's what they were, but they weren't anywhere near as regular. But the fake Bobby, when I talk, I've had panic attacks on the phone during the stuff as well. So, I knew I was having them. But I have weird triggers. Only there's one time I came back from the gym. So the gym was the one thing I allowed myself to treat myself to. That was my treat sort of thing after everything. But there's one time I came back from the gym and there was just a piece of music playing that used to be one of our tunes. And I think I came home crying constantly. I went into the shower. I sat and stood in the shower. Just the tears just wouldn't stop. You have time and you just can't stop. You just don't know how to stop. It just takes over your body. That was a calm time. There's like times where you just want to run away, where, you know, you like triggers like when people don't listen or aren't rational around you, or people attacking you, or there's I find where I used to be able to cope sometimes, now I can't. I stand my ground, but sometimes I'm like, this isn't worth an argument, or this isn't worth this, or but if I try to stay in it, I find that it just reminds me of the attacks, the constant attacks of, I think I feel out of control, and I just need to go somewhere where it's calm. But you know, it affects your body. It affects like, I can't swallow, I can't breathe, I can't talk, I can't drink a glass. I can't take a sip. We're gonna have a sip of water. I can't swallow. It's really, it can be, you know, these things affect people in different ways, and you slowly learn. Nightmares are awful. But I use like sleep hypnosis.
Yeah.
Which helps sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't. A lot of it has helped a lot. Recently I've been having bad nightmares, so I've started it again. But you know, I was trying to wean myself off it. But you know, if I need to,
works, just why wean yourself off it though? I mean, if it's something that's good and healthy for you, there's no, you know, use it.
Yeah, but then there's a point where like you think, okay, well, I've spent, you know, this many months, or like I might have had a month without nightmares, and I've slept calmly. So let's try it without. You have to, like you do. Like, why would you want to stick something on and listen every night? You don't need to. Yeah. So you've got to try, and it's trial and error. And I think I'm quite kind of prepared for that. You're playing with your emotions, but I'm not playing with my emotions. I'm testing myself.
Yeah, you're testing yourself to see if you can.
Yeah, and because I don't want to be. It's not about being weak. It's not. Yeah, it's definitely not about being weak. I'm the kind of person. Allow yourself to feel your emotion, and then just don't take any stupid actions in your emotion, in your state of emotion. Don't make any crazy decisions in your emotional state, whatever the emotion is. And I'm let that emotion pass, calm down, and then carry on. So I think I try to be sensible. You know, you coach yourself, you counsel yourself. I think that's what I do. I've always been like, my faith again has been a massive part. And sometimes you just sit and you think, okay, I'm going to meditate on Vaheguru, the Lord's name, and do that for a time. And I do it at the gym, like It's like I meditate while I'm on the rowing machine, or, you know, I find the treadmill really mundane. So I'll be like, you know, Vaheguru, as I'm walking, and it's like, I don't listen to music, or there might be stuff on around, but that's the place where I do it. And it will help me. It's like, it helps me through like a mundane gym session. So it's going to help me through other stuff too. So
that's fantastic.
But there's lots of passages. Like we have the Japji Sahib, which is about the fighting spirit. And Japji Sahib in the morning that you do, which is like kind of calming and instructive. And I mean, I know there's times that you can do these things, but that you can do them anytime as well. And they just help. They're like your mantras. They're like your self-affirmations sometimes. Yeah. You can create your own, but we've got some wonderful ones in our scriptures. So yeah.
We are now we are gauging or kind of tiptoeing onto some, verging on some of the things that maybe we can't talk about, and I'm very aware of that. And if anything I bring up that you can't say it, I'll cut it out, no issue. Okay. But when we got to the end of the podcast and at the end of the documentary, one thing that stood out to me was the fact that, you know, your life at that point had come to a crashing halt. You know, you'd lost a lot of people that, okay, they didn't exist in the first place, but in your head, you lost a lot of people, and, you know, you lost the love of your life. It just all disappeared. But your cousin just went on with her life. You know, I think she got promotion. You know, she went on holiday. You know, and you at the end of the documentary and at the end of the podcast, you were on your quest for accountability. And I'm trying my best to carefully word this now, so we don't we don't step into that boundary. Yeah. So you were on this quest for accountability. Are we getting somewhere with it? Is it because catfishing isn't illegal? Is that right? Am I right in that? Yeah.
Catfishing isn't illegal. I know there's been lots of discussion about making it illegal. It's illegal in some states in the US. But apparently we have laws in the UK which would cover all scenarios of catfishing. So there should be some law that applies. I've been very adamant that I don't want to be the poster girl for catfishing. And I know some people have put me out there as, you know, she's the kind of catfish kind of spokesperson for anti-catfishing laws. But my issue is, if you're saying that we've got the laws in place to deal with stuff like this, then every police officer who's sitting there at the front desk or wherever they are on the end of a phone needs to know, okay, this is the scenario. Let's work out which things apply to this. The training needs to be given. This is, we say new territory, but this has been going on for a few years now. The cases are becoming bigger and bigger, and you've got Tinder swindler out there, all those different things. And rather than mocking people, and rather than kind of saying this isn't really this isn't a crime, if anything impacts people's lives to the point where they can't live their life anymore, somebody else has done that. Surely it's a crime. You've impacted somebody's life where they fundamentally can't move forward anymore. And whether, and there's lots of things it could be. We talk about coercive control a lot. That comes up a lot when people are talking to me. The kind of harassment, all of those things. There's so many different things it could be. And I think there needs to be, I put in the complaint to the IOPC. And again, that was because the police had just not got back to me. I think there's a step in the middle I should have done first. But because nobody told me what that step was, which was my right, because they just went silent, I then went right to the top, went a bit mad and just put in my complaint. And again, that wasn't taken seriously. It was totally dismissed. And so I appealed. I had 4 weeks to appeal that. So this time I did it again. I wrote it all myself, did everything again. And then I asked Amrit, who features in the podcast, who's a solicitor and had supported me on this journey. I asked him to sign it as a solicitor.
Sure.
And guess what? They listened.
Yeah.
So all of that, the IOPC investigation is still ongoing. It is still ongoing. I think there's still lots of questions that need to be answered there. But I'm hoping for progress and a positive outcome, and I'm hoping that people will sit and listen. I mean, given that how many people listen to the podcast, I hope not just for my sake, but for other people's sake. I did explain earlier that there's other people that I know that have had this happen to them, but just not spoken about it. But because they've reached out. One of them had taken it. One of them was a male victim and taken it all the way to the police. And nothing had happened with him either. And people like that, I hope it helps other people who want to go to the police. I hope it helps. And just not even that, just that police protect them from the whole victim shaming thing. And the thing is, the more people get taken seriously, the less other people will do it. If we as a society treat this stuff as a joke, then everybody else is going to see it as a joke. The police are going to see it as a joke. The lawmakers are going to see it as a joke. It's not okay. It's just not okay to play with people's lives like that. And I just wish people who are nasty about it, and there's some people like, we need to know this and we need to know that. And how can you be so stupid? And I just say, look, you're asking about me, even if I am the stupidest, most naive, most gullible person in the world, why did that person do what they did?
Yeah.
That's it. And I just hope it never happens to you or anybody that you love, because it's frighteningly common. So
you'd said earlier that you don't want to be the face of this thing. You don't want to be the kind of the poster person for catfishing. But your story being out there is obviously is helping a lot of people. It's making people speak out about this sort of thing. If there was one positive takeaway from this entire experience, if you could wrap something positive out, if you could reach in and just grab something positive out of this whole thing, what do you think it would be?
The positive support and feedback that I've had from people all over the world has been really heartwarming, absolutely amazing. And I'm going to get emotional now, but I really, from the bottom of my, even every other day, I'm still getting messages. At the time, it was really overwhelming. Mm-hmm. But even yesterday, I had a message from a guy who said he'd been through something similar, and I've got a lifelong supporter. He's like, you've got a lifelong supporter in me, and just really people who have then gone on to take action because of my story. They feel braver doing it. They feel they can stand up if the police doesn't take it seriously. They'll feel that they can demand something a bit more. They understand the process a bit more. All those, that positive feedback, people who reach out. I always say to people, don't be scared to reach out. If you want to reach out, reach out. I'm not going to bite your head off. I'm no diva. It might take me a while to respond, but I try to respond to every single person because it really does mean so much to me. So for all of that, I've got to say thank you. And I've got to say thank you to Tortoise for telling it really well. I know it was like a massive journey. I know, I was a nightmare sometimes, probably. But I just wanted it to be respectfully told, and to be mindful of our community and everyone. I'm not trying to be nasty to anybody. It's the issues that we need to talk about. And for lots of people, I just want to say this as well. It's not a witch hunt. I know lots of people out there have been, this is my family still. As much as people want to know where the perpetrator is and things, I've seen horrible things online. It's still my family. It's not a witch hunt. I just want all of us to behave correctly.
It is hard in that sense, isn't it? Because it is a podcast, and podcasts are made for entertainment at the end of the day. It is sometimes quite hard to separate the fact that this is real life, this is real people, and real people's emotions that we're dealing with here.
Yeah, and I think that's what so people don't understand, and people think, and I think this is the thing, the internet it's a difficult thing to navigate. I think it needs to be policed a bit more, how we police it. And I've got, obviously, with everything that I've been through and all the loopholes and everything that I found, for me, the new online harms bill doesn't go far enough. And I think for a lot of other people, it doesn't go far enough for children or adults. There's lots to be done. There's lots of ways we do things. There's freedom of speech when you have the internet. The freedom of speech is a whole different ballgame with the internet. Do we need to revisit what freedom of speech means? That whole concept came about before the internet. It's dangerous. We do need to put things in place. We use the internet for absolutely everything. We police the real world. We do business on the internet. We do everything. So why are we as a community scared to police the internet? Why are some people, does everyone have this secret person in them that wants to do naughty things and the internet allows us to do it?
Yeah.
It's quite scary, and there's no filter. There's no filter between me and this laptop and me and my phone. Mm-hmm. There's nobody telling you, oh, don't stalk your boyfriend. You don't need it. It's unhealthy. Your phone's not going to tell you that. Yeah. Your laptop's not going to tell you that.
There's that old adage, isn't there? There's that you don't really know someone until you see their internet history.
Yeah.
To wrap up, I do want to ask, you mentioned before, that you were in a rush to kind of move forward after everything came out, and you rushed into a relationship and, used the dating apps and things like that. How have your relationships been since it all happened? Have you had any even since then?
Yeah, I've dated a few people. I just take it easy.
Good.
It's no different from, anyone who dates me now will know about all of this. And I only want to be with people who are proud of me for doing what I've done, not ashamed of me. So, and for me, speaking out about this, it's not going to be, and this is the kind of person I am, I only want to be with somebody who wants to be with me for me. Right? So they've got to accept me warts and all, just I'll accept them, and just like I'll accept them warts and all. Yeah. But it's that commitment to each other and just not seeing this as a negative, seeing it as a strength. And that I'm not there to hurt anybody. And it's about just doing the right thing. And my faith teaches me to do the right thing, and I've done the right thing, I feel. We're all supposed to stand up for the truth, stand up for people who are disadvantaged, can't defend themselves, and hopefully I've done that. Mm-hmm. And it's not always the easiest thing to do, but and I don't know if I would have done the podcast had it not happened the way it had, but I've done it. Mm-hmm. And rather than let somebody sensationalize something, I just wanted it to be done properly and talk about the issues. So I hope I've done the right thing by me, my conscience I have. It's not been easy, but...
So there we are. Thank you so much again to Kirat for joining us today. It's been such an emotional journey, going from, even for myself, from listening to the podcast to watching the documentary on TV to getting to chat to her myself and finding out what's going on. There are certain things that we couldn't talk about in the podcast today, but hopefully Kirat will come back on and we'll be able to talk about that very, very soon. Take care of yourself. We've got some amazing guests lined up, including one next week, which you'll find out about on social media. Just look for me. Duke writes books all across social media. And of course, please support the podcast by downloading it, by subscribing to the YouTube channel, doing all that sort of stuff. And of course, if you want to buy us a coffee to support the podcast, then please do. The coffee link is in the description of this podcast. All right. Have a great week. I'll see you again soon. Bye.